All right, my brother, let me make sure my phone is off because we run a professional organization over here.
Exactly. Professionalism is key.
Top 5 security.
Top 5 security in the world, Craig.
Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand them. Coaches cannot stand them. Most importantly, the fans can't stand them.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
You can follow me on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media, and the show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities that you can get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. And if you would like to keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network, from the true crime show, the pop culture show, all the interviews, and everything in between, follow us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves.
Wild card weekend.
The league adds a playoff team in each conference.
Meaningful football games late into December.
Give it to you, baby. Keep believing. Keep believing. We're going to take all of us and dominate our opponents. I can't believe it.
Fire them cannons.
And we are here today with one of our best friends. It is that time of year. It has been too long, but if we're going to have him on, it is to celebrate that we are in this time of the year. You can follow him all over the universe. Check out the amazing work they're doing at The Daily Blitz. You can go to the website, thedailyblitz.blog, for all your up-to-date content. Or if you want to stay with them on the social medias, follow them on Twitter at DailyBlitz_61. But if we're talking about Daily Blitz, if we're talking about football, if it is January, that means that our best friend of the show, Christian Simpson, is here on the program. Follow him on Twitter at NYSFinest90. Christian, how are you, my brother?
Man, I feel great to be back. And after that introduction, I have to bring my best. I got to bring my A game after that one. But I'm doing good, man. Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm good, brother. Happy New Year to you. I hope you and the family are being safe and sound. It has
Absolutely.
it has been crazy with COVID being at the point that it is right now, and we are in 2021. The fact that we got to a playoffs is kind of amazing in its own right. But even with that being said, with all the surges that are still happening in this country, it is still affecting the sports world, from the national championship to even some of these playoff games. And of course, I'm just so happy that you and yours are being safe and sound. Hopefully, all of the fans of the Daily Blitz and, of course, Sports from the Couch are safe, and we appreciate them being part of their lives, part of their days. And I always get so happy. My heart gets filled with that joygasm whenever you're on the show and we get to talk about some of this stuff, buddy.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. You know, Eddie, when you sent me that message the other day, you were like, it's time to make the phone call. You sent me the gif of the phone. I'm like, you know what? Say less. You don't even have to say anymore. You gave me the day. I'm here. We're here to talk a little national championship, a little super wild card weekend, man. This is a great time for football. You got 3 playoff games tomorrow, 3 on Sunday, and then everything is capped off Monday night with a national championship.
Well, I want to start off with that, my brother, is the national championship. I've had a hard time this particular season with college football. You know, everybody, I'm not going to judge anybody for being a fan of it, watching it. You know, it's just how I've been with the whole Rona thing and college sports. But be that as it may, it is a wonderful appetizer for our conversation today, even though it is the final meal of this awesome sports weekend. I want to just kind of get your thoughts of where we're at between Alabama, Ohio State. We saw what happened in Notre Dame. We saw what happened with Clemson. We'll go down the road of the NFL draft when we have you back on later on into the spring. But how are you feeling about what might happen if we play? Let's just put the caveat, if we do play. We don't want to sound, dumb when this comes up. But if they do play, how do you feel about this national championship game on Monday night?
Well, you look at Ohio State, and remember, they weren't supposed to be here.
Yeah.
There were a lot of question marks surrounding them about you didn't play X amount of games, so why should you be eligible for the Big Ten championship? And they got a big performance from Trey Sermon in that game against Northwestern. And I'm watching that game, Mikey, and I'm saying to myself, run the football. They run Trey Sermon, 331 yards. Passed one test. Now, the biggest test was Clemson. And if you watch that Fiesta Bowl last year in Arizona, where Clemson and Ohio State played, what was the issue? Trevor Lawrence ran all around them and through them. They contained Trevor Lawrence. They contained Travis Etienne. You got to give Ohio State secondary a lot of credit. Playing that zone coverage, forcing Trevor to throw the ball underneath and play with a smaller field. But give Justin Fields so much credit because he took some hits that it made me hurt the way he was getting drilled. But he showed a lot of mental toughness to make those throws in the pocket, picked apart the Clemson defense to the tune of 6 touchdowns. And, man, they're here for a reason. And Dabo Swinney gave them bulletin board material. I ranked them number 11. It's one thing to keep comments like that to yourself, but don't say it out loud because you're just giving motivation and you're adding fuel to the fire for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they fed off of that. Then you look at Alabama on the other side. It's been business as usual. Nick Saban, still the greatest coach we have in the country today. And this offense, it's anchored by 3 guys. It's anchored by Mac Jones underneath, the Heisman winner, Davonte Smith, reminds me a lot of Marvin Harrison, a smaller yet explosive wide receiver that can go up the field and create. In any route he runs, he's going to get the ball. He's taking it up the field. Best player in college football for a reason. But the guy, I think, who is the end-all, be-all for this offense, he goes by the name of Najee Harris. And you're going to like this one. Reminds me a lot of Matt Forte because he can take handoffs. He can impact the game. And the receiving aspect of it can block. And no man 6'2" should be hurdling over guys the way he hurdles. So there's so many storylines involved with this game. I can't wait for it. I think we're going to get a high octane offensive game. Lots of matchups to look forward to in this one. You got Shaun Wade, one of the best cornerbacks in college football, going up against Davonte Smith, the best wide receiver in the country. Just a ton of matchups and storylines across the board in this one.
So I don't want to spoil the surprise that will be here as we get closer to Monday. The people have to go to the website and check out the accounts when you make your official prediction. But because this is 2021, we like to treat the fans of Sports from the Couch, and we want to make sure that they go over and check out our peoples over at Daily Blitz. Let me ask you, tell me why Alabama can win, tell me how Ohio State wins, and tell us where you're leaning. And then they will go have to see that post-credit scene when you put the official prediction out on all the websites.
Well, I think for Ohio State to win, they have to stop the run. It starts with bottling Najee Harris up. Florida couldn't do it, had the game of his life. Notre Dame couldn't do it, had the game of his life. Now, can Ohio State be that team that can bottle up the run? They're playing better defense. They're going to have to also get Mac Jones out the pocket, I feel. If they can get him out the pocket and make him move, make him a little uncomfortable and discombobulated, they have a shot. In Alabama, play the football that's gotten you here. Balance on offense, spreading the ball around. Davonte Smith is going to get his, run the football. But the guy I'm watching for Alabama, he goes by the name of Dylan Moses. And I've been telling you this for years since we've been talking. A middle linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. He tore his ACL in 2019 and decided to come back. This is why you forego the NFL draft possibly to come back for games in this magnitude. So that's what I feel both teams are going to have to do in order to win this football game. And I'm going to have to pull a Kirk Herbstreit. I can't give the prediction just yet.
And you're going to have to check that out all over the universe. Joining us today is one of our best friends of the show. If you want to know, if you need to know spoilers, because guess what? My man is on the pulse. Go to the dailyblitz.blog. Check him out on Twitter at NYSFinest90. And, of course, the Daily Blitz is on Twitter at DailyBlitz_61. All right, buddy. You know I love some college football talk. You know I'm all about just talking ball in general. When it comes to you, I could talk about anything. But we need to talk about something that you and I, we just live for. It's one of my favorite weekends in all of sports. It is Wild Card Weekend, and this weekend, Super Wild Card Weekend. You're ready to break down what is going to be an interesting, heavy hitter of 2 nights of football?
Yeah, let's do it. This is what I'm here for.
Let's go ahead and start off with one that I'm so intrigued by, not just as a fan of football, not just a fan of fantasy football, not just a fan of confidence picks, not just a fan of putting some dinero on some of these matchups. The Indianapolis Colts, the Buffalo Bills start off Wild Card Weekend in Buffalo. There will be fans in the stands. Christian, let me tell you something right now. When it comes to betting, I am really struggling on not putting money on the Indianapolis Colts. I love their offensive line. I love their defense. I love their running back. Phillip Rivers, if he doesn't make mistakes, if he could get the balls to his 3 tight ends and to T.Y. Hilton, I think they have a chance to upset a team that has all the pressure on them. Am I crazy? I know Buffalo is an amazing team. They have all the sweetheart stories going on. I'm rooting for that city for them, but I'm feeling strictly no emotion. Indianapolis Colts have a wonderful shot of winning this game. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. The Colts do have a shot of winning this game, but they're going to have to go back to their identity, which is running the football. That offensive line is the best in the league. And this isn't your typical dome team because they can go out into the elements.
Right.
And they can run the football. That's what they're going to have to do. Jonathan Allen, you know my rule. You better have game if you have 2 first names. I was high on this kid in college. I think he's going to be great in the National Football League. But the Colts defense, they're going to have to step it up. And the guy I'm watching for the Colts, I'm watching DeForest Buckner. This is the reason why you acquired a guy like DeForest. He's a guy who's in the prime of his career, a 6'7" defensive end who's able to create up front. And he's that glue guy to this defense. Because of him, everybody else is able to roam around freely in space to make plays on the football. So he's going to have to be key. In Buffalo, you said it best. They've been a great story all year long. I just like how mentally tough they are. Yeah. You remember Hail Murray when DeAndre Hopkins just went up and grabbed the ball out of midair on 3 Buffalo Bills, not 1, not 2, but 3 Buffalo Bills. Ever since then, they haven't lost a game. And Josh Allen, he's a great football player, but he's a phenomenal leader at that because that team follows his lead. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a more athletic Ben Roethlisberger. Stephon Diggs, he's been an impactful player, came in from day one, and he's been that number 1 receiver that the Buffalo Bills have needed. I think this is going to be a collision course because you have that offensive firepower from the Buffalo Bills and you have that stingy defense from the Indianapolis Colts. I think it's going to be close, but I like Buffalo in this one. Buffalo, they're just playing too good right now. I think this is the second best team in the AFC right now, Mikey.
Do you think that this is a matchup in which we do have the best possibility of a quote-unquote upset?
Possibly. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Indy won this game. And the way Indy has to win this game is what I just said. Run the football and take the game out of Phillip Rivers' hands. You know, because when he takes shots down the field, what's it result in? An interception. I think this one's going to be close. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say Buffalo 31, Indianapolis 24. I think this comes down to maybe the final 2.5 minutes of the fourth quarter.
And, of course, as we go along with this Super Wild Card Weekend, make sure you just keep up to date with Christian. If anything changes, if there's any news, he will definitely keep everything updated, his picks, his decisions, and his reasoning. He is one of the best in that field because he is up to date with everything. So if something crazy happens in the next 24 hours or in the other Sunday games in the next 48 hours, he will be up to date with that. And we go on to the mid game, the second game of 3 on Saturday, a very fun one, an in-division rivalry, 2 teams that are they could put up points on the scoreboard or they can have a really tough drag-out brawl. I am talking about the LA Rams, the Seattle Seahawks. I personally, in this matchup and moving forward, I've always said, to me, the one team that can go to Lambeau Field and win in the middle of winter and get to a Super Bowl is the Seattle Seahawks and that man named Russ. I'm confident in that team. That defense has gotten better over the last few weeks. The LA Rams, who knows who's going to be at quarterback. This is a team that does have a lot of weapons. One of the best coaches in the league. An intriguing matchup. The second game of Super Wildcard Saturday. Where you're at in this one?
Well, you look at this matchup, both matchups they were interesting. The first time they met, you got to give Jalen Ramsey a lot of credit, shutting down DK Metcalf. I think he held him to 2 catches and maybe 28 yards. And DK is a beast. That's quite the assignment that you're given when you're playing a guy like a DK Metcalf. But I got to give Seattle a lot of credit, because if you've watched the Seahawks closely this year, Mikey, they're a different team now than what they were, say, in September and October. Scoring 30, they needed 30 points to keep a team away, and then their defense wasn't that great. Then you go and get Carlos Dunlap. Jamal Adams is back on the field. He's making an impact. You still have Bobby Wagner patrolling the defense. Right now, Seattle's playing what I call that Legion of Boom football. They're controlling things offensively, taking care of the ball, and the defense is handling the rest. All the Rams needs to do in this one, not only run the football, but attack the middle of the field with crossing routes over the middle and try to get a matchup where you get Jamal Adams in coverage, because he's been struggling in coverage throughout the year. But who's going to play quarterback for the Rams? Is it going to be John Wolford? Is it going to be Jared Goff? And I like how Sean is keeping that a mystery, because you don't want to give your opponent the upper hand. So I like how he's doing this from a competitive nature. I'm watching Tyler Lockett for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think people realize how important Tyler Lockett is to this offense. He's Russell's safety valve. He's that guy that can go over the middle on third down and make that catch to convert the chains. And he's also solid in the red zone. He's a smaller guy, but plays awfully big. He'll go up and go get the football, and he's under 6 feet, about 5'10", maybe 5'11", might be even 5'9", if I'm not mistaken. It's a divisional matchup. This game can go either way, honestly, but I'm going to go with Seattle. I think Seattle, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, and they're motivated. And you just said it best before we got into this game. If there's one team that can give Green Bay a challenge at Lambeau Field, it's these Seahawks.
And that's what I'm really fascinated to see, is kind of how that ends up playing out if they're able to get past a division rival like the LA Rams. And I want to see what ends up happening when you're not, because I assume that they know both of these quarterbacks at this point. Obviously, they know Goff much more. But this idea that they're going to be caught off guard, I think it might be a little overstated, but it's going to be fascinating to see how it actually plays out on the field. What I want to see is, what Seattle team do we get? Do we get the Seattle team that is one and done, or do we get a Seattle team that's going to make a deep run in this thing, that's dangerous against every other team? You just said it best, that they didn't have to put up 30 points, but they can. And I want to see if this is the season, which every year there's always one guy on that team that wins 4 games that has broken out into superstardom. Is this the year that's DK Metcalf? Tyler Lockett's been there forever. He's made huge plays for them. Is this the year that superstar that we saw run that crazy 40, run down that interception? Is this the time that he becomes that big star, that the Andre Hopkins level of player, having that the Stephon Diggs moment against the Saints? I am wondering, I am putting it on somebody like that. How are you feeling about kind of the star-making ability of some of these teams that we've mentioned and maybe moving forward?
Well, you did kind of say it best. In order for Seattle to really make a run, they need Russell Wilson to cook. Plain and simple. He's been managing the game. Seattle has their running game going, but they may need him to throw the ball at least 40 times, and he's more than capable of doing it. He's more than capable of taking the game over with his arm. Plain and simple. It's going to have to be. Their offense is really going to have to step it up, because say they do go to a game like a Green Bay at Lambeau against the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay can rush the passer. They can't stop the run. So that's something you have to watch for as well. But yeah, say if the Seahawks have to play the Saints, in the next round, possibly, because I know the format is different this year with the playoffs. Say if they have to go to New Orleans, they're going to have to throw the ball around. So Russ can't manage the game forever. He's going to have to take a shot or 2 or maybe even 3 down the field.
So let's move on to a game that I'm not necessarily hyped about. I know that mainstream high-end media has kind of tried to convince people about this matchup and that it might be a game. And while the formula in history has played itself out where a strong defensive line that gets to the quarterback is this man's kryptonite, but I just don't see how the road to victory happens besides this crazy, they basically just destroy Tom Brady. And I'm talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Washington football team ending Saturday night. A team with Godwin and Evans and Fournette and Jones, and then obviously our guy Tom Brady convinced me that as great as Chase Young is, that they're gonna win this game.
You look at this matchup first. I want to talk about Tampa Bay, and we were talking, and you even sent me a question. What's wrong with Tom? He looks old. He looks defeated. Remember, this wasn't your typical offseason in 2020. These guys had to adjust on the fly, especially a guy who spent 2 decades with the same team and basically a couple of tweaks, but still the same offense playing for the same head coach for pretty much his entire legendary Hall of Fame career. Now you're going into a new system, no OTAs, no training camp. So he really had to learn and adjust on the fly. So those first 6 or 7 games, that was Tom Brady's preseason. Now, going into the playoffs, you see a guy who's throwing the football with more authority, more zip. He's taking care of the ball, and he's on the same page with his receivers. I was so excited for Chris Godwin when Tom signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know, I was excited to see Tom and Mike Evans because Tom hasn't had a true down-the-field wide receiver who's consistent like that probably since Randy Moss. And where's Randy Moss now? The Hall of Fame. He's the owner of a gold jacket and a gold bust in Canton, Ohio. This is going to be an interesting matchup because the Washington football team, they've had a phenomenal defense all year long. All those guys on that defensive line could be the stars on other teams. Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and also have the veteran and Ryan Kerrigan. But here's my thing. Washington doesn't have enough offense. Alex Smith stays in his box, but he's not going to get into a shootout with Tom Brady. And if he tries to throw the ball a certain amount of times, they're not going to win. I think this game can be closer than a lot of people expect because I could see this being like a 23-16, 24-17 type of game, but I like Tampa Bay to advance.
Do you think, and this is the only reason, if home field didn't go through Green Bay, I would have actually have kind of just ridden the coattails of Tom Brady until I'm proven wrong. I thought Tampa Bay could really make a run at the Super Bowl. Not to say that they can't, but I mean, the idea of seeing Tampa Bay go to Green Bay and win a game I know is really foreign to people. But here's the thing. The guy who's at quarterback has played in Foxborough, has played in Kansas City when it comes to these big games, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, places that have the frozen tundra in the middle of a AFC championship game. So to me, while we understand the average citizen of Tampa Bay might not be able to play football in Green Bay, we're talking about professional football players. There is a possibility that it's not the Seattle Seahawks that might end up being the more likely of the teams to go to Green Bay and do it. Can it be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
It definitely could. It definitely could because it definitely could. And the reason why I say that is because if they can get that running game going, Brady can use Gronkowski over the middle of the field. But here's what's going to be the end-all, be-all, and a deciding factor for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That front seven, can they get home to the quarterback? And when they get home to the quarterback, that takes a tremendous amount of pressure off of the secondary because they've had trouble covering this year. You saw what happened when Kansas City played Tampa Bay. Tyreek Hill went off for over 200 yards in a quarter, Mikey, in a quarter. So that front seven is definitely going to have to be key. They're going to have to get a ton of pressure on Aaron Rodgers in order for them to be successful. That's going to be the determinant outcome if the Buccaneers play the Packers.
Saturday night should be a lot of fun, and I am super excited, and we're having a lot of fun here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves as we get ready for Super Wildcard Weekend. We even gave you a little bit of preview of the National Championship game. Best friend of the show, Christian Simpson, joins us today. Follow him on Twitter at NYSFindus90. Follow the show on Twitter at Daily Blitz _61. And, of course, check out the amazing website, thedailyblitz.blog. He went to go and see what his thoughts are on the Pittsburgh Browns matchup and see what we got in store for the rest of the wildcard weekend. Christian will have you set up and ready to rock, so make sure you keep up to date with him. Let's move to Sunday, buddy. And as much as excitement as I have for the Bills and the Colts, I think that is the matchup of Saturday. I believe this is the matchup of Sunday, and it's the first game of our Super Wildcard Weekend on Sunday. That is the Baltimore Ravens, the Tennessee Titans. This is what I believe the 5th time in 8 years that these two teams have played each other, or at least in the last 8 playoff games. This is the 5th time for the Titans that they've been matched up against Baltimore. So this is a rivalry that nobody talks about when it comes to postseason play. So many superstars, so many guys, so many fantasy heroes are in this matchup. This one has the potential to just be the game of Wildcard Weekend. How hyped are you for this Titans-Ravens matchup?
This is the matchup I'm looking forward to the most, and you hyped it up perfectly. Look, it's these matchups that make me want to stop doing what I'm doing and get back on the field. But I miss talking about it with you a little too much, so I'm going to decline that offer. But
it's always on the table.
Right. Here's the thing about this matchup. Every time these two teams play, Tennessee, they always seem to, quote-unquote, out-Ravens the Baltimore Ravens. More physical at the point of attack. And when you look at these two teams, they both have a lot in common. What do they both like to do? Run the football.
Yep.
Tennessee has the best running back in the league. He's a grown man, and he goes by the name of Derrick Henry. And just like I said about Jonathan Taylor, you know the rule. You better have game if you have 2 first names, and this guy does. I mean, 2,000 yards closing the season out with 250 yards. Come on, man. He's an absolute workhorse for the Tennessee Titans.
His mama fed him potatoes.
Horse. Yeah, definitely. But you look at Baltimore. I like how this Baltimore team is looking right now, Mikey, because they're playing with confidence. Lamar is showing some flashes of his MVP season. They're running the football consistently with J.K. Dobbins, Lamar, Gus Edwards. Mark Ingram is getting a couple of carries. Hollywood Brown has really stepped up as that number 1 receiver down the field for Lamar. And that's the guy I'm actually watching. But most importantly, Baltimore is letting Lamar be him, making throws on the run. Because I called Baltimore out after their regular season game against the Tennessee Titans, and I said, you know what? They're not coaching Lamar Jackson to his strengths. He's a running quarterback. He can be a pocket quarterback in due time, but he's young. Let him learn the ins and outs of this game, and everything will pan out perfectly for him. Because I think he has what it takes to be a solid pocket quarterback, but it takes time. He's not even in the prime of his career yet. Tennessee on the other side, I have an issue with them because they look good. They'll build up 15 and 20 and sometimes 21-point leads, but then they get complacent and they let teams back into the game. They don't have a pass rush and they don't have a secondary. But the guy I'm watching for Baltimore, I'm watching Hollywood Brown. You know, I think he's going to make plays. Tennessee, they're going to put everybody they can in the box, and they're going to force Lamar to throw the ball over the numbers and over the top of the field. And for Tennessee, I'm looking at Ryan Tannehill. He has to be solid in this game. This team goes as far as he goes. So if Baltimore's sitting 8 or 9 guys at the line of scrimmage, can he make a big throw down the field? That's to be determined. I think he can. He can also move as well and get those wide receivers involved. Get A.J. Brown involved. Get Corey Davis involved. Get Jonnu Smith involved. But Tennessee's defense, they're really going to have to step it up. I think this is going to be a physical, hard-hitting football game. I think it comes down to the last couple minutes. I like Baltimore by field goal.
Oh, and it has all the makings of an instant classic. This is something that we mentioned in that Buffalo Colts game. This is something that I keep just saying about in that Rams-Seattle game, and it plays itself out. We know who the main stars are right now. There's a chance that new superstars are bred. There is new chances for people to put their name to claim a spot of the top-tier guys. A.J. Brown has that opportunity in this game against a former MVP who's going on the other side of him that has a chance to ball out. The quarterback for Tennessee and Ryan Tannehill, this project, a top-tier draft pick that had to go to a different team, win the starting job, has been to a conference championship. Can they ball out? Derrick Henry will not win the MVP this year, but this is a guy that just ran 2,000 yards. I mean, he is an absolute man-child. So this is the opportunity where a lot of guys who are established stars can continue on that road. But you have 2 guys in A.J. Brown and Hollywood Brown that we might see something that is different. Steph Diggs level, DeAndre Hopkins level. Take their team to the next divisional round level. That is what I want to see in this matchup. And just
sorry to interrupt you. You know who AJ Brown reminds me of when I watch him? I see a lot. He's a quicker, stronger, and more physical version of Anquan Bolden.
Oh, wow.
The way he moves in space, stockier guy, but has the speed to start and go. You remember Anquan?
Oh, yeah.
And how he played, AJ kind of reminds me of that. He's built from the same cloth. He's cut from the same cloth.
See, guys like AJ Brown and CD Lamb and somebody like a Jefferson, to me, are more mixtures of, I agree, I like that Anquan Bolden. I also see a little bit of Julio in them. I think a lot of these guys have just the bigger receivers that have that range of motion, that have that touchdown radius. That how do you defend something like that? How do you defend AJ Brown?
You can't be physical with him.
Yeah, period.
You can't jam him at the line of scrimmage because he's a bigger receiver, and it comes at the point of attack. You got to play up on him, man-to-man coverage underneath, across the board, and I have a safety over the top, so that way he has the speed to get by one of those, quicker cornerbacks. So maybe I have an athletic safety over the top. You can't put a linebacker over him because that's just a mismatch, and he's winning that battle 10 times out of 10. So I probably play a cover 2 against him. Have him underneath, kind of jam him. Yeah, you got to press him. Wherever he is, you have to be with him. He's running in motion. You run in motion. He's the one guy on this Tennessee offense that you really have to circle in on. He's their best receiver.
To me, the most unique receiver, and we're on this just for another second, and we haven't mentioned him because they're not playing this weekend. Davonte Adams, to me, is the most unique receiver in the NFL. So many of these other guys are go up and get them. Physical receivers, run great routes. I think Davonte Adams is the best at all of it. He's physical, makes the best route decisions, cuts the best, has the best radius, has the best hands. Like, to me, right now, I'm not saying of all time, I'm not saying next year or the year before, but right now, he is the special specimen of receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, he definitely is. I mean, he does it all. He is, in my opinion, I think he's the best route runner in football. It's cool for you to catch the ball and move with it in your hands, which is important, that yards after the catch, but how he frees himself to get open, it's absolutely astounding. Every time I watch him, he makes route running look like poetry because he's so smooth and fluid with it.
And speaking of smooth and poetry, this team didn't have a lot of that, but they have some players that do that, and there's another team on the other side that has some superstars that have done it this season, have done it in history of the NFL. We are talking about the Chicago Bears, the New Orleans Saints, the second game of Wild Card Sunday. This is my theory, Christian. I believe that the Saints should win this game. I believe the Saints will win this game. If you are a Bears fan who is looking for a reason to pick the Chicago Bears, it's this simple. You don't have to worry about the plays that kill you against the Packers. They will score up and down the field on you. They will shred your defense if you let them. But if you don't miss tackles, if you make open field tackles, you can contain the New Orleans Saints in 2020, 2021. I'm not saying that you're going to be able to do it in an entire season if you're in the NFC South. But on one game, on one Sunday, if you're looking for how the Bears can win this game, the defense where all the money's at, all the draft capital is at, they need to be able to make tackles and keep Alvin Kamara from shredding them. Easier said than done. That is the route to success. You don't have to worry about a Michael Smith, Emmanuel Sanders 70-yard play broken down because Danny Trevathan is going against a speed receiver. Not against this New Orleans Saints team. But I do think the Saints win this game.
Yeah, I think the Saints win this game as well. I think the key for the Bears, you kind of jumped on it about their defense. I'm actually watching Akeem Hicks for this Bears team on Sunday. I think he's going to be the X factor. I don't think people realize how important this man is to the Bears defense. Everybody says it's Khalil Mack. No, he's their best defensive player. You know what you're going to get from Khalil Mack. Remember what I just said about DeForest Buckner a few minutes ago, how he's that glue guy for the Colts defense? Well, that's what Akeem is for the Chicago Bears defense, a guy that commands double teams up front and playing the 3 technique, the defensive lineman on the interior of the defensive line. He can get after the quarterback. This is a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", a little over 300 pounds, and he has the speed to really collapse the pocket. He's what I call a pocket pusher. So not always getting to the quarterback, but he can make his presence aware in the pocket, and it forces offensive lines to chip him and circle in on him. So if the Saints don't have an answer for him, it could be a long day for an older, and I don't think 100% Drew Brees. And then you look at the Saints, they're here once again. I know a lot of teams kind of threw the towel in on them when they were 1-2, but this team can get on a winning streak at any time. And this team won 9 in a row, and they were still able to stay afloat, even with Taysom Hill as their starting quarterback. They've changed their offense up. Michael Thomas hasn't really played this year because he's been hobbled with that ankle injury. So what have they done? They're playing small ball, lots of short, quick passes, lots of Alvin Kamara in the open field. And Alvin Kamara is what they thought they were going to get out of Reggie Bush. He reminds me a lot of Reggie Bush with the way he moves and how he's able to cut and impact the game. The guy I'm watching for the Saints, I'm watching Emmanuel Sanders. He knows a thing or two about playing in big games, and he was just in the Super Bowl last year with the San Francisco 49ers. So I look for Drew to look his way a lot. Look, for the Bears to win this game, Mitchell Trubisky cannot throw the ball a certain amount of times. He threw the ball 42 times against Green Bay. He's not that type of quarterback. But it's a different matchup now for the Saints because when these two teams met the first time, who was the starting quarterback for the Bears? Nick Foles. He's not a mobile guy. So I see the Bears kind of drawing plays up, making Trubisky throw on the run, letting him use his feet because that's when he's at his best. When he's creating and he has a running pocket to make a throw from. They're going to also have to run David Montgomery. Keep Drew Brees in that offense on the sidelines. That's what my formula is for the Chicago Bears. But I like the Saints. They're at home. I just think they have too much across the board for the Chicago Bears. I think the Saints win this one.
I agree. I will say this, and we were talking about it. If you are an adult and you like to put $5 on things, this is one game where I think a true dog, can make you a couple bucks. You know, it's the NFL, one game. I don't think the Bears do anything, even if they beat New Orleans, having to go to Lambeau Field because of the way the seating gets realigned. It's just doom and gloom. But you know, if you could win one playoff game, and here's the thing that unless you're in Chicago, it's hard to put into factors, you know, because it's being in town. They might be playing for their jobs. Mitch Trubisky might be playing for his job, not just here, but for around the NFL. Matt Nagy might be coaching for his job. Ryan Pace, his entire career might be on this particular game. I believe that the McCaskies are going to keep all of them to begin with because they look for the easiest way out. And this is the easiest way out. 8-8, who knows what happened if they not. This is their thinking. Had we not benched Nick Foles, what if we do this? What if we do that? At the end of it, I think everybody comes back. But there is a lot on the mind. So out of town, it may not be a factor, but in town, there's a lot riding in Bears versus Saints on Sunday, 3 o'clock in NFL Wild Card Super Weekend. Going to be a wonderful one. And we get to our last matchup of Wild Card Weekend. It is another division matchup that truly has been impacted by COVID-19. One of the playoff games that was affected by this. Everybody wants to give credit to the NFL. There were times where it was really sloppy. There was times where they were ahead of it, and it still impacted them in the playoffs. It looks like we're going to have a game. They're not going to have a head coach. It is the Cleveland Browns. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers. How's this go, buddy?
Man, well, first, you got to give a lot of credit to the Cleveland Browns. I've been talking about them all year, and I feel for Kevin Stefanski. I hope he feels better. And anybody who's contracted this virus, you know, I think I say this on behalf of both of us, Mikey. You know, our thoughts are with you when it comes to this because this is nothing to joke around with. Before his first playoff game, and now he can't even be there. But Kevin Stefanski has come in and he's changed this entire culture for the Cleveland Browns. They used to deal with a lot of outside noise, and now everything stays within that locker room. And he's given this team an identity. They run the football. That's why I'm watching Nick Chubb in this game. He's one of the best running backs in the National Football League. They have the best tandem of running backs with Nick and Kareem Hunt, who got a second chance after his incident. Now, for Cleveland to win, they have to run the football at least 40 times. Nick Chubb needs to carry it about 25, and Kareem Hunt has to run it about 15 times. There's no way that Baker Mayfield can get into a shootout because a couple of weeks ago against the Jets, he threw the ball 53 times, and look at how that panned out for him. They didn't run the football. And then you look at Pittsburgh. Okay, so you've been listening to the rumblings about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what's the one thing that you've heard people say that they don't do offensively? They don't run the football. They're not built to run the football, Mikey. And I say that because they don't have the offensive line to put their hands down in the dirt and play downhill and push people 4 and 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. This offensive line is built to pass block. Why do you think Ben is getting rid of the ball as quickly as he is? Because he's getting the ball out of his hands in less than 3 seconds. Remember back then when Ben used to extend the play and make plays with his legs and still make a throw on the run? You're not really getting that from an elder statesman in Ben Roethlisberger anymore. But the equivalent of a running game for the Pittsburgh Steelers is the short crossing patterns over the middle of the field. Quick passes. And that way, that's able to open everything else up down the field. The guy I'm watching for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this game, I'm watching Deontay Johnson. You hear about Chase Claypool. You hear about Juju. Deontay is another guy that can get up the field, create, and go get his. And he's also a threat in special teams as well because he can return kickoffs and punts as well. It's another divisional matchup. These are the best matchups in the playoffs. I like the Steelers in this one. It's been a great year for Cleveland, but this is something that they're going to come into in the offseason and build off of. They won 11 games this year. How do they plan to get better?
See, here's my thing about Pittsburgh versus Cleveland. It's not even on the Cleveland side. They're going to have pressure on them. The real thing is, what are you going to do if you're Pittsburgh and Big Ben isn't the goods anymore? And there's no disrespect to Big Ben. He's one of the all-time winners of all time and one of the great Pittsburgh quarterbacks, but the fact remains is this is a young, quote-unquote, a young man sport. And that's easy for me to say behind a microphone, but my point is there's going to be a point where the goods aren't there anymore. And it doesn't matter if you have 4 great receivers and anything. When you're going against a guy like Nick Chubb and you're going against a Jarvis Landry and you're going against a Kareem Hunt and a Baker Mayfield, they don't have to be role beaters. They just have to be able to keep up with the old man. Do you think that this is more of a fool's gold we might be judging on past accomplishments opposed to what's happening right now?
Some people can, and you just touched on it really well. I look at Cleveland, they can't try to go throw for throw with Ben Roethlisberger in this one. Because if they do, they're going to get blown out in this game. Run the football. Nick Chubb is giving this team a complete identity. Let Baker. The way I look at it, the Browns are like the Los Angeles Rams of the AFC. Running the football, letting Baker roll out, make throws on the run. They don't need Baker to do everything. And another thing about Baker Mayfield, he's more mature this year, not just as a leader, but as a quarterback. Because I see a guy that steps back into the pocket who looks to make that decision. Baker Mayfield 2 years ago is forcing a ball into a tight window when 2 or 3 guys are around his intended receiver. Now he sees guys covered. He makes his reads. I see him not only getting that running game involved, but a lot of quick passes to Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper as well. Austin Hooper, that tight end, that's the safety valve every quarterback has on. And the Steelers are going to enter with that chip on their shoulder because after starting 11-0, they lose 3 of their final 4 games. Losing to Washington, lost to Buffalo in Buffalo, and then losing to Cleveland last week, and they lost to a divisional opponent. Now they get them again. So this is also, next to Baltimore and Tennessee, this is, I think, the most intriguing matchup of the weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I'm necessarily excited about the actual matchup on paper, as a heavyweight matchup you would like in a fight, but I'm excited about the intrigue of the story that might play out. This is the last game of the wild card weekend. Everything is on the line. We'll know who's on the next round. Who knows what surprises we would have gotten. So to have that be the final matchup, I'm super excited. And hopefully it's going to be as enjoyable as this podcast was here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves, as one of our best friends, one of the best in the business, joined us today to break down the Super Wild Card Weekend and the National Championship. It is best friend of the show, Christian Simpson. He's on Twitter at NYSFinest90. The show is on Twitter at Daily Blitz _61, and keep up to date with all the amazing articles, pieces, stories, opinions that he has going at thedailyblitz.blog. Christian, before I let you go, one final thing, one kind of silly-goosey thing that's been rumbling on NFL Twitter. Deshaun Watson might be wanting out. Of course, we got a fun story before the playoffs and all before the weeks of the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously, as a Bears fan, for all you who have watched Avengers Endgame, when Hawkeye turns around, it's like, don't give me hope. Please, NFL, do not give me any hope. Obviously, the Bears do not have enough assets and enough cap space, I should say, to make a move like this. So, with that being said, if you're Pittsburgh, if you're Washington, if you're San Francisco for that matter, hell, if you're Bill Belichick, what do you do to get Deshaun Watson out of Houston?
Everything. Everything, man. I mean, it just sounds like it's getting ugly out there in Houston because he is the face of that franchise, and we know that there are many guys who are exactly that to their franchise, and I bet you, they've been notified that certain things are going on. And it just seems like, the first time this happened was when Bill O'Brien traded away number one receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. That was the first domino to fall. Then he gets that extension for over $160 million, puts together the best year of his career this year in Houston on a 4-win team. I mean, he wins 11 games. We could be talking about Deshaun Watson right now as an MVP candidate. I mean, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I loved him at Clemson, and what he did at Clemson has nicely transferred over into the National Football League. You're talking about a guy who has command and control of his offense. He's a quiet leader, a leader that leads by example. Then you find out I guess there was a rumor that he wanted Houston to interview Eric Bieniemy, and they didn't do it. And I think Eric would be a game changer for Deshaun Watson. I mean, look at what he's done with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. And they're one of the best offenses in the league, and Mahomes is arguably one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the National Football League. So, yeah, if you're a New England, because you need a quarterback, New England gets him. New England's back in the AFC race. Like, they win that division, or they compete with Buffalo once again, and they're back in the AFC race. And could you imagine him with Josh McDaniels, knowing the offensive-minded guy he is? That's a team that could go after him. What about the Saints? Because rumbling on the wall, Drew Brees, this is it. This is one last dance for him. Is Taysom Hill really the guy that can take you over the top? I think you get that more with Deshaun Watson. San Francisco, that could be a little questionable because it seems like John Lynch is really sold and invested in Jimmy Garoppolo, but you never know. This is the NFL. This is where you really have to expect the unexpected. Pittsburgh, another strong possibility because Ben Roethlisberger doesn't have much longer. Or I'll even throw a wild card in there. Why not Philly?
Interesting. You don't think Jalen
Philly,
Hurts?
Maybe even Washington, because Alex Smith won't be there.
I think Washington might be one.
Right, and Kyle Allen, is he a guy that can take you to the promised land? No, he's not. So this is going to be a really interesting story to watch the next couple of months, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got traded, and I'll be on with you talking about it.
Oh, yeah, and so with that, let's end it with this one then. And this one's more serious than the silly goosiness that would be Deshaun Watson heading to the Chicago Bears. There are some quarterbacks that might end up in Chicago, even if Mitchell Trubisky signs a reasonable deal, whatever the case may be in the offseason. A Sam Darnold, a Matthew Stafford, a Matt Ryan, somebody like that. Who do you think is the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears? Or who do you think we hear legitimately rumbling to be the next quarterback over in the lakefront?
I think Trubisky is going to be back, and I think they're going to sign him to a 1-year deal. It'll be a make or break. He's good next year. They can talk about the rumblings of giving him that contract extension, but if he struggles, put someone else in, then you have to go your separate ways at the end of the day. So I do think it's going to be Mitch. I don't think Matt Ryan has much longer in Atlanta. I could see a team like Denver going after Matt Ryan and then drafting a quarterback so they can learn behind him. So, yeah, the rumblings are going to be interesting. We're already talking about the offseason, and it hasn't even happened yet.
We haven't even got to the first game of Wild Card Weekend.
Exactly.
Daily Blitz .blog, NYS Finest 90, and, of course, Daily Blitz _61. He's not only one of the best insiders, he's not only one of the best guys that cover it, simply one of the best humans we have. He's my brother. Much love to the one and only Christian Simpson.
Oh, man, love you back, man. Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope to be back on soon.
You always have a home here on Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Christian Simpson, the Daily Blitz. Enjoy Wild Card Weekend. Thank you all for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. And the show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities that you can get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. And if you would like to keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network, from the true crime show, the pop culture show, all the interviews, and everything in between, follow us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves.